Okay, now. Hi, William. Hi, William. How are you doing? Thanks so much for joining from
Yes.
Dubai. I'm actually currently in Korea, and it's very nice and a bit too hot, but it's good. How are you doing? How's things over in Dubai?
Weather is hot and we come on the wrong time. This is summertime, so everybody is actually getting out. We are coming here.
Not to worry, not to worry. So yeah, thanks so much for joining. As you know, in Korea right now, there's the Korea blockchain, and I organize this as a side event, hoping to engage, people in discussions. So what I'd love to do is maybe I'll just say what's happening so far at the conference, and then maybe we'll go to introductions.
Yeah.
So this conference had started like a few days ago, I think on the 7th, if not around that, and it's going till another week. You'll hear some background noise because they're test driving for tomorrow for the e-pre. And basically what's been really interesting, they've been discussing issues like cybersecurity, they've been discussing about, blockchain, NFT, a little bit on tokens, but not too much. And so
Yeah.
we'll definitely deep dive into, your experiences and the projects you're working on.
Yes.
So maybe, William, tell us a bit about yourself.
Number one, I'm a Singaporean and been in the block. I'll say I actually came in pre-blockchain. So we are actually doing pins back with MasterCard back in 2004. So we actually sort of a tokenized knowledge using that payment, using pin payment before even we are in the blockchain. So in 2008, when Bitcoin came out, we just took a notice. But 2012, we were actually encrypting emails with Bitcoin. So because at that time we found that it's a very easy way to set up a private key, a public key. We choose PGP, so we were using that. So that's how my access into the blockchain era. So back in 1995, we are one of the earliest knowledge group in Australia that built the mobile phone wallet. That was a Nokia and this palm tree. So those in my age group will understand those what we call the wireless access of smartphone today. So, but we actually have it as a firmware. So that's background back into the knowledge. And normally they call me an OG because we have minimum three generations of technology, from telco, which is pager, to mobile phone, to prepaid phone cards, to backend voice over IP, from then down to internet, which is integration, probably more like what we say is email encryption. Then comes back to blockchain. I try to say we are pre-blockchain, so we were involved with NXT was before Ethereum. So we actually got into Bitcoin, NXT, then Ethereum. Then that's how I'm a believer of Ethereum. So I would say I will actually devote more than 95% of my time into wherever the development of Ethereum, because I believe in it, and it's actually performing as the knowledge that we always do. And we were always like ahead of time because of our pre-knowledge in the marketplace, in wherever faculty of time, whether it's at the time where we're in the pager, the time we were in mobile phone, the time with the internet, the blockchain, and the future we are going ahead. So history is always repeating itself by being every stage. What we have encountered over the years is always that what we call the crypto phobia or the tech phobia, when trying to convince somebody to email, which is say, oh, my email will have a problem, will be what they call privacy law and everything. When you send a fax over, no, I better write my mail because people wants my handwriting. When we're doing this web, oh, it's going to be hacked, everything, but everybody's doing that from that
Yeah,
under web point
that's
two.
that's a really good point. Yeah, I think right now, actually, at this conference, one of the last speakers was also talking about cybersecurity. And what's been interesting is, as we all know through this process, that as there are people gaining in or getting access to it, there's no real initially like legislation, and then even with the hacking, how do you sort of find the hackers, as it were? And there was a lady who was very interestingly talked about the role of insurance coming into all of this. And so I actually, after she spoke, I asked her the question, well, does insurance really play a role at this point in time? So I'm very curious to know from your experience so far, like, have you had experiences like engaging with insurance companies or talking to them, or do you know of other maybe startups talking about, whether they can not guarantee like if there's any exposure or failure, but do you think that there is actually a serious role to be played for insurance companies, or is it really going to be quite difficult?
Maybe I should ask the question, why do we have insurance?
Why
Because
do we have
insurance,
okay.
when you have insurance, you're going to buy a future failure, which is your future. Are you still living in the next 10 years, 20 years, or future demicity? So you're buying, actually insurance are buying a future. So why are you buying the value of somebody's hand, somebody's smell? Because he already have created a value today. Because definitely there's a valuation, there's what they call, somebody has put up a value that his hand is worth $1 million because he's getting $20,000 per advertisement. So he has to create a value. Why are we putting an antique that is about $10 million? Because you can never find one more as same, or even have the signature of a ball, which you did on Beirut ball, or because it's no more around. So nobody can sign that thing anymore. So you're buying on scarcity, things that cannot be actually repeat again. So technology now have caught up. It's before we were trying to do everything on the software, but people can hack the software. So now the new word comes out, we call the NFT, because the NFT is actually what we call the record of time. I mean, Alan, I know you're a lawyer. Your background of training is every time you want to prove something, you want to make sure that show me what have you committed. So when you go to court, the 3 or 4% always happen. First, the police had to catch the thief. The thief were telling him how he commit the crime. But if you don't tell how to commit the crime, the police can never catch him. So both of that is the police and thief. Then after they have caught it, the police had to find a reason to charge him. So he will ask his lawyer to find under the legislation whether there's a law to charge him. Then the other guy, of course, if you have been the thief, you also have to find a lawyer to tell them there's no such law, or this law doesn't happen. So then at the end of the day, then you go in front of the judge. It's the argument of at that time, when the crime was committed, what law, what state, so all this happens, everything is because the knowledge is there. If there's no Mount God happening back in Japan, if there's no, because China know this back in 2006, so they had to stop it, because if they don't have a proper legal system, they cannot catch people. Because if you catch people, what to charge them on? Then they actually, after 2016, 2017, they found and use it as a commodity law for crypto. That's what everybody doing. And the American have one more law, which is good, because wire fraud, because crypto is wire. So you got them on 2. So this is why now, once the law and everything cuts perfect, then what happened? Then you can insure, because now you can find the origin and you find the end. Then you can create the value in between. Okay, so you ask me the insurance question. Of course, insurance is going to be there, but is it right now? It's still in the very early stage, because insurance have not been paid out. Somebody pay out $10 million on the insurance of using that yet? No, because you don't have a precedent. That's why, you know, in law, you always have a precedent. Okay, but something came out last month. You know what was that in London?
Tell me. Tell me what it is.
A hacker took the money from a gaming site in London. You know, everybody say, oh, my wallet, it can't find me. So they've managed to get a summon, a court summon, and make it into NFT. And they put into the wallet of the theft. So what happened is, once you have that in the theft, is in the blockchain. So what happened now, I start to track this wallet now actually goes to Coinbase, Kraken, or Binance, because those are last mile. So now I tell you, excuse me, you know, the guy said, oh, I don't know, the wallet came in, I don't know, but excuse me, I already put a warrant, I'll put a summon. So now, legally, anything you touch here belongs to the court. So now,
sorry, you go. Yeah.
I mean,
I was going to say, it's very good
it's
point.
the way now, the real thing, the NFT now serves the purpose.
So I was just going to, I was going to say, you're very correct in saying that, you know, if you have things, it needs to be enforceable. And I guess, you know, what you're also alluring to is because, and this is an area I'm very interested in many emergent texts where the law is not substantiated or there yet, is you have to sort of reinvent yourself or allow the laws to be interpreted in a way that you can account for new things, that like digital assets. Oh, what is it? Is it a commodity? Is it not? Is it that? And so I think, you know, we saw the trend that, you know, organizations and governments are catching up to the thought and the idea that certain things fall within financial regulation. And if not, like, for example, being in the UAE where you're also currently at, you know, them having those discussions, you know, what is the token? Is it a security? And then how we go about it. And that sea change of criminalization to, okay, institutions accepting is a huge sea change. I want to hear more your thoughts about what the impact would be of, you know, the current markets and institutionalization of, or interest in this sector of, you know, blockchain and tokens.
Of course, just like what we have internet back in the early days, we all just started with email. Then you start to have a scam email, start to have everything. So because you must have, as I say, I go back to what your strength of background, because you're a lawyer and your background in international law, and also maybe more than what I'm just putting at that. You must have an origin. You must have a case. You must have a precedent. Then if you start in UAE, you can start in Singapore, you can start in US, or you go under the Commonwealth law, you're going under the UAE law. So once you have that, that becomes a precedent on each country. And because of that precedent, criminals don't want to get involved. So they try to find a country that don't have that precedent. So this is where I'm saying the catching of the law will take some time. Of course, people get smarter and get it done. So if you are saying now, we call it the reg tech, which is actually the regulatory tech, is always there because it hands in hand. So once I can able to source and legalize this document, then I can issue it. When I can issue it, it becomes a financial tool. You understand? It's actually all hand in hand. So now, if I want to go and do something right, I mean, we are not talking, we're always talking about criminal trying to scan the net. I mean, but there are a lot of people likes to do the real one. Okay, that means they want to make sure that their transaction is viable, because you have problem like, you know, just happening just about 2 days ago where when the money is in the bank, but the guy don't give the money to the bank. That's so the guy had to go to the bank to rob the money. But if he has put in the money in the blockchain, I mean, he can take it out because this is money. I'm just trying to say is there's no reason why I should take the money away from me, but if it's my money, unless there is a run of the bank, or because then they have to go under, because the bank is receiver, then it goes to the court. Okay, we understand that. So you're still protected. But if you don't have that insurance that's protecting, like the US FIDC law or some other countries, then any bank is also, if you have $1 million, FIDC only insures 250,000. So your 750,000 is not insured. So you lost 750, but you still insured on the 250, which is actually like the insurance that plays in each country. So what I look at it is, technically, we are still in the early stage, but also because in the early stage, because there's not too much crime that's been sent to court, because even the court want to know how to charge a person. Because there's no, what do you call, precedent.
Yeah,
if there's you know, when you go to a court, you're talking about the Queen's 150 years, 10 years, there was a case. Because you need to do, I know what the legal ways to, what to search. Is there a precedent? Because if you have a precedent, you can turn the left, the right, and up and down.
I'd like to move on to something slightly different now, which is related, and it's NFTs and also metaverse. So that is your realm of expertise. I'd like to hear more about what you're currently working on, maybe a sort of dumbed down guide of what metaverse is. And more recently, there's discussions about metaverse in the film. So yeah, can you share with us like what kind of projects you're working on?
Number one, I always tell everybody, do you dream? If you dream, that is metaverse 1.0. When you do the virtual, it's 2.0 and above. So whatever you dream, it always can come true. It's because you are actually living in the state of digitization, because our brains are very, very smart. You always like to do things that are out of normal. But same thing, we have actually, incidentally, we call it taxing knowledge. We're actually training our younger generation, those Generation Z, those baby boomers on that. When they are young, we actually give them Nintendo, PlayStation, because we actually accidentally training to be digital minded. So you notice that for them to adapt to the digital minded compared to us, which I'm also in crypto fear, okay, cryptophobia, and what we call the technophobia, because technology cannot so fast, because I'm fear that I don't catch up. The reason I not catching up, because I don't want to develop something that can spend $10 million, and in 2 weeks I got a guy just do 2 codes of word, he already done my $10 million knowledge. This is actually happening. The guys have spent $10 million. Oh, I have the IBMs, I have the IBM. And this 20-over-year-old, he came out because his mindset is different, because he's not trained by the normal way, like the academic way, but he's trained in a creative way. That means I don't need you to tell me what to do, but you tell me you want the result, I give you the result. Or I think the result should be this. Because when you go to a school, you have to go to the kindy, the secondary, the college. But if this guy can go straight to the end, what should you go to the center? But there's no logic, because you don't find that logic. That is why I would say from now on, I'm actually facing the generation alpha. Those 2014 to 2024. We got 2 more years to finish this generation alpha. So when this generation alpha comes in, guess what happened? We had to be prepared. So that means if I come by generation alpha, we're talking about generation C is 20 years. We don't go back 20 years. We have to go back now, because this is the time. Because now, if we are planning for that, we are not actually planning on what we call education. We are actually planning what we should do at that time with the knowledge we have in the last 20, 40, 50, 60 years. Understand me? So now I see.
I love this, this idea of, I call it mental gymnastics, but when we talk about like the past, the current situation, and like the future, my passion is in space. So I'm going to sort of just go a bit wild in terms of ideas with you. So let's say we talk about space and future space travel, right? And how do you envisage, and I actually come to the thought that, yes, we all desire to go to space, but eventually maybe we don't need to, because of VR, AR, and, emergent tech. We can visualize. How would that work in terms of the metaverse? Now, you mentioned dreaming is the 101 sort of version of the metaverse. So let's say, if we want to say, I want to be able to go to space, how would metaverse play a role, you think, in the notion of space travel?
I look at this in this way. When you travel someplace, you're actually getting new visual, okay? But the visual might not be the visual you think. A house is a house. But in that space, there's no house. There is actually emptiness. It's just like you're going to a desert. Going down to the sea is still also same thing. I mean, going to space is one adventure you always write it. Going to the deep sea, down hundreds of miles below the ocean, is also the same thing. It's just that you have a different, both using a pressurized chamber, both have to train like astronaut. It's almost like no oxygen. Okay, so once you have that itself, you think back. Of course, healthy guys, younger guys can travel 10 years up to Mars and return. But how about those people who are not able to travel? How do they visualize when I have my great-grandchildren actually now in Mars? How do I communicate? How do I feel? So what's the best way? If I will send a video back, that's a big file. But if I were to do what we call a transitional, keep on what we call the nodes, sending the information, that's where the blockchain, the quantum comes in. Your information is packaged and you send it to a storage. And then we are doing, because now we probably have a lapse time. I don't know what's the lapse time from now to Mars for any message to come in. But if we have that lapse time almost like instantaneous, that you actually go to the metaverse, becomes the day I can actually talk to my grandchildren over in Mars, looking at that. That metaverse is become a visual. And we are now no more looking at a 3D in a video, because high resolution, you need the high computing power, you need high bandwidth. But this metaverse will become using edge computer, which everybody knows is going to supersede more on the normal computers because of the graphics. Of course, the quantum, but not everybody can get to the quantum, but the quantum will not be as you own, but you will be owning a terminal through quantum, just like what the crowd started. Initially was a computer network, and now you only need an account, almost the same thing. So it's decentralized, and the knowledge now on encryption, just like what we have in the encryption, where 20 years ago, when you download an image, it take about 15 to 30 minutes just from one image. Forget about video. And the bandwidth was only 32 kilobyte, not megabyte. By the time you load, and then you have the internet before, you'll cut off because it's copper wire. So you actually reload again. Same thing is going to happen on the metaverse for the data we are in now. You give me 5-10 years. Okay. The speed is fantastic. Yeah. Then now you say the metaverse is different. I don't need actually to wear a 3D goggle. I just need a AR. I'll just wear a lens. Or I don't even do a lens. You understand how images are created in our What I see is my fingers, but we actually don't, we are actually not seeing figures. We are identifying this is my finger. Why the orange have to be round, an orange color? Why the banana have to be yellow? Why can't it be square? Because it is trained in our brain and because of the physical object in the dimension. But if you are in the different frequency, that's why they show the time travel frequency, the frequency of you seeing a ghost or seeing something, it is actually in our brain. And if you are being tuned to a different frequency, remember, when you're going to Mars, why are not we seeing aliens? Because we're on a different frequency, we can't see them. But one day we can tune to the frequency and see the beings on that frequency. Wow, this is what I'm trying to say. This is the same thing here. People are not seeing us because we are not in the same frequency.
So
it is.
Yeah, so on that level, I just wanted to ask, so what exactly does quantum play a role in? Now, I think someone said to me once that the reason why we eventually at some point, I think it was like a reference to Elon Musk, where we as humans will need to implant chips in our brain is because once we've, succeeded in, adopting AI and then AI systems learn to self-learn, that they will actually end up being more intelligent than us as human beings. And so in order for us to catch up with the AI systems, they talk about quantum, and I just want to check whether it is like the understanding of that, where technology basically surpasses human intelligence. What exactly is the idea of quantum, and is that the aspiration of technologists? What are your thoughts on that?
It's just like a calculator. Back when you first time have a calculator, your numbers always 1 + 1 with a piece of paper, and now you got a calculator to do it. It's the same thing. Suddenly a technology, equipment take over the role. You were used to write everything and you need to get a publisher to do it. Now, everything is in the computer software or in a mobile phone. You do everything, a PDF or design or animation or on a website, on an app that you never have happened 20, 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Because this is where I see once the technology, that's the neural link that Elon Musk does, I think the best thing we have here is you actually predict the person before he falls sick. Because you're in space, you cannot afford to have sick. People are human. We become wild. We become crazy. Before you do that, we actually want to make sure that things can happen. Not forgetting you are in an enclosed environment. You are not having an open land. Or unless you are in like in a submarine, you stay 6 months, 9 months in a submarine, all have psychological build up, you understand me not? So yeah, in the same atmosphere, there's no oxygen, and you leave out the capsule, you die. So now you're gonna die in the same space. So your mind is go. So if you're in space, let's say Mars, I want to see my garden, I want to see my car. I don't have I won't have the car in Mars. I miss my dog. I miss my smell of my roses. So I have to use metaverse, which is actually now, because the metaverse, the word came out from a storybook. That's how it's all being done. Yeah. So you create the word metaverse, everybody's metaverse is the thing. Do you know it's came from a storybook? That's all.
So I'm curious. So actually, this is getting very philosophical, but there's a lot of films out there that sort of talk about, our reality is not the reality, that what we are living is an imaginary world or a simulated world. So do you think that there has to be a level of, I don't know, of our own sophistication? And that's another interesting point about avatars. I remember I watched a documentary where they said that they wanted to make the avatars look like human enough so we can associate, but not so human enough so that we can't differentiate between them being an avatar and a real human being. So I guess there's that sort of push and pull on the idea of, we fantasize or we like the idea of being in a very sophisticated high IT sort of tech, and of course there are a lot of like what they call the fake deep tech as well of individuals, the imitation of individuals, but at the same time there's almost like a sort of narrow moral or ethical ground where we don't want to sort of be risking it too much, because to the point where we cannot differentiate between what is real and what is not real. I mean, I'm very curious in your thoughts about that. That do you think that it would cause confusion? Would it cause moral hazard? Or do you think it's just a question of adaptation, people getting used to the technology?
Okay, give me another. Why you're in Korea? Korea is famous for what? Number one in the world, plastic surgeon. You notice that if this is a surgeon, and you see all his clients all have almost the same look, because his skill set of making the face in that manner. So the whole avatar is the same thing. So I can create avatar. I can even have the face reconstructed. So if we physically human being can do it, the avatar can be. So that's nothing new about it. But it's the character inside the avatar. So I'm actually a famous doctor, but I love music. But my parents didn't about that. I love it, but I cannot demonstrate because of my psychologically or my physically, or I'm handicapped. I always want to be a Superman, but I'm now handicapped. I broke my legs, I accident or something. But in the metaverse world, I can be anybody in the world. So what happened? I was looking at a program back about before pandemic was in Japan. Old folks are there, but why are they dying? Why are they not psychological? Because they have nobody to talk to. So that's why they have animals. The avatar becomes, we call it the digital twin. So also while they are talking to each other, there are a lot of information being deciphered between both. I mean, I have seen people like this. So, oh, do you know that there was a military case? They were fighting. Do you know? I just heard this. It is a fantastic. I need to share this. Is that people were saying this aircraft carrier, not an aircraft, it's a ship. And then this guy made a mistake. He was mixing too much water into the diesel because of spray. Because you don't spray the diesel or the fuel inside the ship, it explodes. Okay, so this guy actually put too much water, and then when the water was so much there, suddenly this boat in Pakistan went out to the sea and he got raided and exploded. So now, and when you have this water and this thing, he becomes a hero because he was putting out the fire. So now his incidents of that becomes the hero of that event. But I'm just saying it's okay.
So I think if it's okay, it might run up a bit, but we could see if we could log back in after. So I just wanted to ask you, so you made a really good point about how in many ways it's like a second life or a second chance, where because of disability reasons, because of lost opportunities, it's almost a very Freudian concept where Freud would say we always go back to the things that we cannot have or the experiences and whatnot. And so I mean, from on the one hand, if you think that a metaverse is fictitious, i.e. there's no moral harm, because, you know, on earth, as you know, I guess you talk about the 10 commandments, or there's every religion that would talk about a certain moral code, or at least as humans we hope to live by. Would you envisage the same with the metaverse, like causing no harm? You know, there's ground rules, or do you think really it's a safe place just for people to exercise their own fantasy, for lack of better words, where they can fly, be Superman and whatnot?
Okay.
Or do you think there needs to be some sort of control, like Facebook? You know, like at the beginning, if you imagine Facebook, there was no, you know, no sort of measure of, you know, consistency in terms of, you know, I don't want to use the word surveillance, but certainly it was not until there were certain harms like cyberbullying and all that kind of stuff that came out, in which then, you know, things changed and there was a level of accountability that was needed. So I'm just very curious from your thoughts, like, how would that look in the future for metaverse?
I'll put it this way. A metaverse is just like maybe 10, 20 of us being stranded on the island. We each have our own skill set. Somebody be alpha male will become the leader. Somebody who will be very good skill in the medical skill will become always the doctor. So everybody has his role to play. Then, of course, there's some idiots going around. So you had to set up a legal system to punish him or to throw him. So actually, metaverse will be self-regulated. That's what they call the magic word, DAO. The DAO will overtake that, which is actually called community run, which is actually true. So when you go to a country, just like you see what happened in the, if it just no colonization, you actually live by that. You see the wall is still in the wall. The villagers have elders. The elders have his own practice. You see? So it's already there. We are human. We go everywhere. We have the rules of engagement. Like Chinese, or we do this, but Chinese have Confucius, so we need to respect the elders. But you come to the Western world, what, 13 years old, I have to get you out of my house. So different, what you got, traditional, everything. But what happened if you put all, and this Chinese had to come to America, he lived like the American because the system adaptation, right? That's why the always says, do what the Roman do.
Yeah. You know, what's really interesting is I've always had a thought that the future will be run by the younger generation. I back then had a cousin who knew how to code. I mean, use the computer before he even knew how to write properly, like in the sense of you know, so shocking, right? So I'm very curious in knowing if, for instance, the future is led by the younger generation, like in the way you're talking about learning. And in the past, it would be
No,
the older generation learning,
no.
passing down that knowledge, and then so forth. But now it's almost like reverse, you know, a reverse scenario in terms of the younger generation. They're the ones that are doing the coding. They're the ones that are inputting what they value. And to be honest with you, there are certain apps out there, for example, TikTok and Snapchat. And I'm constantly asking myself when I work with entrepreneurs, what is the value creation? But then I take a step back. I think, okay, fine, it's COVID. People are locked down in their homes. It is a form of entertainment that everyone can associate with, blocked, you know, in the four walls and laughing about whatever it is. So then I wanted to ask, this is a very, and it might sound judgmental, but I'm just curious, how do you think education is affected? So what we say traditionally value in Asia, I could say, you know, it's the STEM subjects, you know, the sciences, all that. But it sounds like, and it probably is already the case, that there are jobs that are created in the future that doesn't necessarily require that. Might be a totally different skill set. You know, what we value now could be totally redundant in the future. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? You think that, you know, we as human beings can readily prepare ourselves for this, or do you think it's organic? Do you think it's just going to be like a bit like COVID? You know, people are just going to work from home because the circumstances will shape the roles that are needed, or do you think it's something, you know, we can give it a bit more thought and direction, give direction to?
Okay, talk to somebody about 20, 30 years ago who don't even touch computer. He will have a secretary typing his letter. Now, do we need to type the letter? No, we just use voice recognition to be done. It's just technology caught up. But because of the age, the reason why we call the old the wiser is because you make enough mistakes to know what to do the mistakes. So the younger guys, I'm saying he might be very bright. He might be the best soldier, but he still can't run the country because he still don't understand that you might be the leader, but you still need the whole framework of getting things done. When you train a soldier, you only train every lieutenant, every general has to be a soldier. But then why are you positioning each one of this? Because one is the skill set, one is the knowledge base it has. And why I always notice the guys who are still staying in the military, which become the general, is because he got too much knowledge. Because he have fight enough war, he have got enough mistakes, he have killed enough people, he has saved enough people to tell him this war or
Yeah.
this rescue mission or this police with that knowledge, I can catch him. But you get a new guy, oh, I got computer, I can catch him. But that's only what you know, but it's not what you are experience.
Yeah.
Experience, that's where the metaverse comes into it. Talk to your grandfather. The grandfather says, oh, I came from a war and everything, but you never hear him every day. So your grandfather and your grandmother, if it's around, or my great-grandfather, my grandmother is not around, but what happened? If I have recorded them, and now today I was just sitting down, let's look at my grandfather talk. Then they're looking, I didn't realize my grandfather actually did that, you know? Then you actually got that knowledge, but you only see it on video because it's not related. But if
So,
you come from your family,
yeah, there's two things I want to mention there. So you made me think about one of the reasons why I started New Space 2060 was because I work with startup entrepreneurs that I would say, you know, didn't really understand the concept of contract. And then I thought, oh dear, even though they're really smart people, you know, eventually when you do business and you're going to sign an agreement, you need to, you know, keep to your good word. It's called good faith. So that was one of the things. And that's from having a framework and not just thinking, okay, I can do whatever I want. And the second thing you mentioned about grandparents and ancestral knowledge, this is really invaluable. But do you think it's kind of, for me, it's like everyone has a history because we talk about our parents, our great great parents, and you know, and so forth, and we go back, you know, centuries and whatnot. And interesting, there are like DNA tests that, you know, can show, you know, where we're originally from, you know, if not, you know, thousands of years. That certainly, that extra piece of information would change how one identifies with themselves. So to give you a really good example, I did one of those, you know, DNA 23andMe, and I realized there was some Brazilian blood in me. And I thought I could never imagine that. So how do you think that would impact people's image of themselves?
then you have a distant cousin in Brazil, might even be the origination of the human tribe. That's what you find. I mean, it's just how do you put it this way? Once you find this discovery, what you do? You try to find the roots. You start to find, it's just like, how do you put it this way? Why Chinese migrated overseas? Okay, we adapt it. This generation, we try to suffer. The new generation, if it is actually trying to find who's the grandfather, who's the great-grandfather, might be even the king, might be even the eunuch, maybe even the prince, might be even the soldier. But what you do, you find what you call the roots. Once you have the roots, then you discover knowledge. I give an example, you know very well, because you're also in the space and everything. When you get something from space, what you do, you want to find out what it is and why it is. Then you actually go and dig up under the ground, you got artifacts. And this artifact is out of this world, but actually maybe it's time travel. That's what I'm doing the science. So you actually look at it, it was actually now that was sent back in time. And in doing this, it's almost like what you're doing in space. You see, space is something you get out the sphere of the Earth rotation. But if you move the old Earth rotation and you go back in time by its own rotation and everything, we go back in time. We go back in the future. Then we found that we might have lost a pen about 1,000 years ago, and it now becomes a different object. These are things that we're doing. But we believe that we human evolve, which we have. But proud to evolve, we actually also create a lot of accidental, we call things that left behind. You find things that are unexplainable.
So I really want to thank you for your time, and you can hear like the audience getting like very engaged now. I think tomorrow there's going to be the start of the X3. Thank you so much for your time, William. This is really, really wonderful.
Thanks, Alan,
I'm sure
for
we
the
can speak for
invitation.
hours. And definitely this will be posted on YouTube and shared with other people who weren't able to join us. So I hope you have a wonderful time in Dubai, and let's keep in touch and let's keep this conversation going. Thank you so much. Thanks, William.
Thanks, Alan. Bye-bye.